Today, we're getting under the hood of postpartum with Smitha, the founder of Sakhee, a women's health startup on a mission to transform postpartum care for mothers. How did you feel during the postpartum journey, physically, mentally, and emotionally?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, Elizabeth. So I had my daughter about 10 years ago. So postpartum was, um, for me, physically, I had a C-section, so it was, recovering from a major surgery. But I had a lot of support at home. I had my mom, my partner, my dad. So they were able to physically support me in terms of making me, nourishing meals and kind of ensuring that I'm not carrying a lot of heavy stuff. So I felt quite supported physically. I think where I started to struggle with is more on the emotional side and on the mental health side. And that's where I started to feel that perhaps I was not ready for this role. And I kind of felt like something was off, even though I was doing my best and I wasn't feeling my best during that time. And particularly returning to work was one of those challenging moments emotionally and mentally to kind of leave my daughter and go back to work. So yeah, postpartum, I think, I was not prepared for all these changes in life because so much of postpartum, when you're preparing for welcoming your new child, it's all about like the things that you need for the baby. And it's about like that diaper pail or the crib or the clothes, but no one tells you like what are you going to go through physically, emotionally, or mentally. And I had like no idea that it was, all these things that were happening to me at the same time. And I was responsible for caring for this precious little human. So I felt that was very challenging from a postpartum perspective.
What exactly is a postpartum doula, and how can one help me and my family?
Yeah, postpartum doula is actually a trained professional who is going to support mothers navigate both physical as well as mental and emotional recovery right after childbirth. And while everybody is focused on the baby, the postpartum doula is kind of ensuring that the mom has time to rest, recover, bond with the baby, and also provide like education around how to care for herself, what kind of comfort measures might be helpful for those range of like physical symptoms that you're experiencing. And then even if they are also an emotional listening partner for one, your birth experience, which is traumatic for many women. So just processing that with you, and then navigating all these various new responsibilities, sleep deprivation, exhaustion. How do you navigate that? And what the postpartum doula is trained to is recognize some of those key things that may or may not be something that the mother, the birthing parent, or a partner or family member may recognize. And so then they can help connect them to the right resource, whether it's in the community or within the healthcare system, so that they can get more advanced care.
How long did it take for your body to heal after childbirth? And what did you feel was normal versus concerning?
Hmm. This is a very subjective question. So, what I felt in my recovery might be very different from what somebody else might feel. Because I had a C-section, for me, I felt like I didn't have the core strength to do a lot of different things. So getting up from the bed or doing work, like there was pain that was there, and also numbness from the area where the surgery was. But I checked in with my doctor and they said that it was normal. I think where from the recovery perspective, each person has a different journey, right? Like sometimes it's harder to recover from an emotional perspective. So I was having a lot of postpartum anxiety, or anxiety in general, or also going through some amount of depression, but I wasn't at the moment that I was going through, I didn't know that that was what was happening, right? So all I felt was looking at all these other moms and saying, oh, they look so gracious. They're doing this with such ease. And, what's wrong with me? Why am I feeling this way? And it was only later on when I was back to work, I had joined a working moms group and I kind of opened up and shared with them that, hey, I'm kind of struggling. I feel like I'm not doing a good job. I'm like not feeling on top of this, managing everything. And they were like, oh, that's normal. Like, that's what we all kind of are feeling or felt when it was the early days. So I think this phase it's very subjective. It's very dependent on each person. And what I think from what is concerning, we do as if in my company, we share with women, like, here are some of the things that you should watch out for if you are bleeding, and you're, right after birth, and that could be up until like 6 months sometimes. And this is called postpartum hemorrhage. Like if you're bleeding more than one pad an hour or passing clots, which are like, the size of a plum, that's a warning sign. Or you have shortness of breath, you have, severe chest pain, severe abdominal pain, or you're struggling with, leg pain, which is swelling. So these are all warning signs, and you want to definitely go into an ER. And I always, in our company, we recommend that you call the emergency labor and department number, because they know how to support postpartum mothers. So these are warning signs that we want to watch out for. And from a mental health perspective, if you're feeling completely disconnected with your baby, you have thoughts of harming yourself or harming your baby, again, this is a warning sign. And this is something 1 in 5 women go through, like postpartum depression. Or so we have support for that, and we want people to know that this is a warning sign that you can get support for.
What should I expect emotionally? And how do I know if it's postpartum depression or anxiety versus the baby
Oh,
blues?
yeah, such a good question, because it's all overlap, right? So, any mom or any birthing parent who has come home with a baby is going to experience some amount of, like, a feeling of, oh my God, what did we just do? Did they send us home with this little precious thing, and I'm supposed to care for it? Because there are a lot of demands, right? Like it's feeding every 2 hours and taking care of the baby, or also physically recovering from, major life event. So I think the first couple of weeks, that's what they refer to as baby blues, kind of, which is this extreme exhaustion because you just delivered a baby. Then again, you're sleep deprived, and you may have these because you're kind of bound to the home, and you're feeding all the time. So some amount of that cabin fever kind of settles in. So that is what we kind of refer to as baby blues. Although I don't particularly like that term, but that's what that acute phase is. But even during that time, where you would some symptoms to look for anxiety wise is if it's preventing you from doing something that you would normally do. Like you want to go down the stairs with your baby because your kitchen is downstairs, but you're so afraid to take the baby down because you're like, oh my God, maybe the baby will fall, right? Like, so these intrusive thoughts kind of take over your life that don't allow you to do some of those regular things. So that's where we would say you may be suffering with postpartum anxiety, where the anxiety, which in some cases is a good thing, it's trying to warn you that, hey, something may not be right, like take care of it. But sometimes it's so overpowering that it just takes over and doesn't let you live the life that you want to live. So that's what we call postpartum anxiety. And that you have support for that. And again, like with therapists, with CBT, or just cognitive behavior therapy or other kind of therapy mechanisms, you are able to manage some of those thoughts and get support for it and cope with it. With depression, it is more postpartum depression. Some symptoms are where you're completely feeling disconnected from the baby, or you're feeling like really low. You're not able to enjoy this moment with your child, and it's even self care feels so hard. Like you can't really take a shower, or you don't want to eat anything, and you're feeling like just not yourself. You're like, sometimes it's women describe it as like they feel like a shell, and it's like a switch that just went off. And that's incredibly sad. And again, there 1 in 5 women are going through that. So we know that this is very common. It happens, and there's both mental health therapists who can support, as well as there's medication. In fact, FDA approved the first drug for postpartum depression in the recent years. So that's been something that has been really helpful for mothers to really get out of this phase. So I think there are different layers. Again, these perinatal mood disorders have many different flavors or kinds, and I think if it feels off, then it's off. So please reach out for help, and talk to your friend, a family member, or a therapist when you're going through this.
When can you safely resume exercise, sex, or return to work?
Yeah, another very subjective question, because people's lives are so different. So let me start with return to work first, because this is very dependent on what you have access to, right? So in different states, we have different laws. I'm in Massachusetts. I think we have finally a really good policy here where we have the medical leave and bonding leave. So medical leave, yes, it's no longer like short-term disability, which is what I had, where you're getting part of your pay, and pregnancy and childbirth was considered disability. So it depends. So it depends on the work that you are doing, and so if you are in a job that has given you that parental leave, then you have the luxury. I say luxury because many women don't have that, and it's devastating that they have to go back to work within 2 weeks or 3 weeks because they don't have that kind of benefit. Although we would recommend that women at least have 8 weeks of rest at home, at 8 to 12 weeks, because until like 3 months, babies don't even know that they are separate from their moms. So and it's similar for the mother. So it is incredibly hard to, not only physically, but also emotionally, to return to work. So again, that's subjective because it depends on people's financial conditions, the kind of job that they're doing, and the policy of the state that they live in. Now, the second one was exercise, right? So the exercise. Um, so one thing I would say is, in the beginning part of your postpartum, it's not the time to be like, I want to bounce back, I want to get back into exercise. I think that is the time to rest. Acknowledge that you have done something incredible. You have just created another human, and you need the rest to recover from this, because your body has completely transformed, right? It has made room for this, six to anywhere from 6 to 8 pound or 9 pound baby. So now it has to come back to, perhaps again, come back to it wouldn't be like the pre-pregnancy body, but it's coming back to a place where you're not pregnant anymore. So give time for that. A good amount of getting up, going to the restroom, having movement, maybe taking slowly, starting off with walks. And please listen to your body. It's telling you that it may be too much, because one of the things that women experience after childbirth is they're still bleeding, right? And whether if it's your C-section or vaginal birth, you still have bleeding for a few days. So that's also a sign. So if you're doing too much activity, you may feel that has increased, or you're having pain. So recognize that and slow down. What we have in our health system, which is the 6 week appointment with the OB-GYN or a midwife that took care of you during your pregnancy and childbirth, will examine you, and they will do an internal exam also. Like, first they'll check on all the symptoms, they'll do an internal exam, and the internal exam kind of gives them an idea of, okay, is your cervix closed, have you healed internally? And that's when they'll tell you, like, okay, you can resume, like, activity to this extent. And they also give guidance around sexual activity at that time. So at that point, the reason why they ask you not to have sex until that 6 week appointment, from a clinician's perspective, is to make sure that your uterus is healed. Because with sexual activity, you could get an infection again, and that could be serious. So this is what they are checking. But then let's all be realistic about when you can or want to initiate sexual intimacy. Some people may not want to do that, and they're all touched out with breastfeeding and somebody being on them, like a little person being on them the whole time. And it's important to be able to recognize that emotional aspect and rebond with your partner, and you may feel very lonely, because sometimes partner, we are trying to go back to work at different times, so we have coverage, right? So you may not have the support of the partner in during the days. So there's some part of like reconnecting that needs to happen before you're ready for sexual intimacy. So yeah, it all depends, but this is kind of some guidance that I would provide.
What should I eat to support recovery, energy, and breastfeeding if I choose to breastfeed?
Absolutely. Nutrition is so important when postpartum. So, for two aspects, right? One is there's a huge shift in hormones after you've delivered your child. So, nutrition can be really helpful in kind of rebalancing hormones, as well as there's, with breastfeeding, you are draining a lot of nutrients to your baby. So, now you need to replenish it. Um, 80% of breast milk is water, right? Like, so we need to make sure that moms are hydrated, and that hydration can come in the form of water or electrolytes, or fruits that have water, like watermelon, and things that like naturally soups, things that naturally have they have liquid in it. So that's one. Again, for breastfeeding and for physically recovering, protein is a big aspect of it. And if you eat meat, then you have options, and lean meat and fish, and with high in omega-3 is great for your brain, baby's brain. So all of those things would be great. But plant-based protein is also great. There's so many options that you can explore. And then another unpleasant side effect of childbirth and postpartum is constipation. So, having a high fiber diet and substituting with like natural things like prunes and kiwi and high fiber foods can really help in ensuring that one, your diet is balanced, but you also have the fiber to have to avoid unpleasant things like constipation or hemorrhoids, which again, one of those things that happens during postpartum, but we don't talk about it. And that's kind of sad. Like, we need to provide more education to moms around that. And then, like, breastfeeding, whenever you sit down for breastfeeding, I would recommend like grab a drink and a snack. And if you as someone who's a partner or a friend or a loved one listening to this, I would say, if you want to take care of a mom, make little, like, things that they can munch on in between meals, and put it in the fridge for them, or put it next to where they're sitting, so that they can eat when they feel like. Because breastfeeding burns a lot of calories each day, so you want to nourish yourself. And again, calcium, super important, because the baby's going to get the calcium, right? It's coming from you sometimes. So I highly recommend that you take I think these are things that OB-GYNs, midwives will recommend, like to continue your prenatal vitamins, but also like continue having more calcium, and things that help with your gut biome. Yeah.
How did you cope with exhaustion and lack of sleep? And when did you ask for help?
Yeah, I didn't cope very well. So I personally struggle with insomnia, or still struggle with insomnia sometimes. So I'm a very light sleeper. So small things that wake me up, then I'm awake. So during my postpartum journey, breastfeeding, if when I would wake up every 2 hours, it was hard, because it was hard for me to fall asleep again. And I also was like very scared, like I didn't want to fall asleep while I was feeding my baby. So that was another thing that was on my mind. So I was like always kind of awake, and it was exhausting. But I had a very supportive system and family. So my partner, what he would do is, this is something like a tip for people who are supporting somebody who's breastfeeding. So he would try to like change the baby, change the diaper, bring the baby to me so that I could feed the baby, and then make it as less disruptive to the person who is breastfeeding, so that they can just feed the baby, give the baby back, and then they can sleep. Because sometimes you really want to do the breastfeeding, but it can really take it can take, it's an effort from from like group of people that love you and love the baby to make it happen. I also feel like we are so hard on ourselves, and I feel I could have done this in my own journey, that I could have maybe substituted 1 or 2 days with formula. And it's not, the way I thought about it was 0 or 1, right? I had to breastfeed every single time till my baby turned 1. And that put a lot of pressure on me. And I think my advice now to people is, if you need a day's sleep, like if you're going a week without sleep, this is going to harm you way more and your baby way more than actually giving them a bottle and taking a day, like one, like a 4 to 6 hour stretch one night so that you can get some rest. And also during the day, there are things that I was lucky that I didn't worry much about like keeping stuff clean, or I mean I'm a clean person, but during that time I wasn't like obsessed about it, because I was like, it's fine. I'm nurturing this baby. So that's another thing I would recommend, is like try to if you and the advice of sleep when the baby sleeps is kind of it's really tough, and it's not something that people, I don't like that advice, because sometimes people want to get stuff done when baby's sleeping. but um but if you're exhausted, please take that time to just rest, so that you can catch up on some sleep, and you have more of yourself to give. Because babies and children take, right, like they can take all the time that you have, and they will want more because they love you and they love your company. But you got to set some boundaries of when you need to take care of yourself.
What changes should I expect in my relationships with my partner, my friends, and even myself?
Yeah. Another very important question. With my partner, with my partner, or with a partner, right? I think your first child really changes everything, I think, um, in good ways, and there are things that you are like, okay, this is how it's like when there's a third person in this relationship. Because up until then, up until you have your, I think your first child, you are able to manage everything. Like if someone doesn't do something in the house, or you have ways to like you take care of it at a later time, right? Or communication is easier because you have all the time, and not all the time, but I feel like when looking back now, as a parent, when I look back at my time when I was not a parent, I was like, I had all the time in the world, like what was I complaining about? So like you had opportunities to communicate more with your partner perhaps before you had children. But then when you're in this phase, it all becomes about the baby, right? And there's so much work. It's first 3 years is a lot of physical work for parents, I think, because there's just you have to do everything for this little human, and that puts strain in relationships. So I feel good communication is really important. Making sure your partner knows both ways, both partners, the birthing parent and the other partner, kind of need to communicate like what's working for them, what's not working for them, where do they need support, how do they feel feel today? I love the like how Brené Brown made the example that with her husband, she would say, "Hey, I'm feeling like a 20% today," and so it's a way to share that. Could you kind of pick up some of the things that I am not able to do, or I may be irritable? So I think with your partner, good communication is really important. With with friends, it's the good friends. I think the people who really get you, they just naturally blend into this new operating system in a way. They're like, hey, they're there to support you. They're there to support your emotional well-being. And I personally have some incredible friends who've done that for me and still do it for me. So that's been a huge pillar of support for me. And then there are going to be friends who may not get it. Like, they may not get that, you may not be able to the drop of the hat, make plans and go out. But someday you may need them and you may give them a call and be like, hey, can you chat right now? I really need to like get out of the house. Or so if you're in relationships where you feel like your parenting journey is being misunderstood or not, there's not much understanding. It's okay. Give it time. It'll all settle. If they are good friends, you'll figure it out. And if it doesn't, then it was good when it lasted. So just go move on to find people who can appreciate and be part of your new journey. I think the hardest part is the relationship with yourself, because it is a huge identity adjustment. So I'll just share my own personal experience. So for me, my care, like the way I saw myself professionally was like so different after I became a parent, because when I was not a parent, if I needed to get stuff done, I would pull a all-nighter and just do it. And I felt really good about like, hey, I checked that off. Like I was on top of everything. And I put that same pressure on myself when I was a parent, and I compromised a lot on my sleep, and I've never felt happy about my work product, because I was like, oh, I just feel like if I had like 5 more hours. And so that was the adjustment. And then my therapist actually had told me that, Smitha, you need to, stop trying to be perfect and be okay for somewhere between good enough and excellent. So, and I was like, wow, that's actually a really good advice. Like, so when I'm looking at something and I'm thinking, oh, I could spend another like 2 hours doing this, I'm like, is it good enough? Did I do everything? I'm going to send this out and wait for feedback, because earlier feedback felt like if it wasn't good feedback for me, I was like, oh, I didn't do my job probably. But now as I was starting to be more flexible with myself, I have started to expect, um, I've not, or I was not expect less, but like just because I can do it, I don't need to do everything. Like that's been a big problem, because I was like, oh, if I'm hosting, I'm going to make like 10 things because that's what I used to do. And now I'm like, I'm going to make 2 things or 3 things and we're going to have a good time. I'd rather meet my friends, or, I'd rather have a family over. And it's not something that's so overwhelming that I don't want to do it again. So this used to be a thing before, but I'm working on it. Um, yeah, I think relationship, like who you are. Um, I have started to really get more in touch with who I really am now, and put my energy in places that give me joy and take happiness in those little things that happen on a day-to-day basis.
What role does community support play, and how do I build my village postpartum?
Community and is so important, and your community can look different from someone else's community. So who are your friends, who's your family? And sometimes I've also seen people lean on religion and faith and their church or their temple, or people like in their neighbors. So I think we need that. So, and we need to be deliberate about it, and we need to put in effort to build that community. So this is important. And some of us may be introverts and some of us are extroverts. It may be hard for us to restart this, building the community aspect if we haven't done it before. But you can start it anywhere, and this is important. And I don't think people should feel guilty about asking help. Actually, feel grateful that you have help that you can ask, and do the same for somebody else. Like, ask them for help and offer help. So don't try to do this alone. And if you don't have a lot of people in your community, there are also support groups for parents that you can access, which are free, which can be another source of support. So yeah, like, I think this is very, very important when you're bringing up children, and even in general, but I think it's even more important when you have young kids.
What kind of care and follow-up should I expect from my OB-GYN, my midwife, my postpartum doula, or a primary care provider?
So, our health system unfortunately just gives us like one appointment at the 6 week mark, as a touch point for OB-GYNs and midwife in the traditional healthcare system. And this is where a postpartum doula can be way more helpful, because they can do more touch points between that week 0 and week 6, right? But at the same time, I think all OB-GYN midwife offices are very welcoming of parents calling and saying, hey, this is what's happening to me. This is my concern. Sometimes they will do a 2 week check if you're going through something, whether it's related to breastfeeding, because there may be a lot of challenges in the beginning with breastfeeding, that they may check out and give you medication if needed, or with your, with whether it's vaginal birth, C-section. There are things that may not feel right, and the doctor's offices are either answering phones and or seeing you. I think it's really important to advocate for yourself. So don't feel like you need to be a good patient. Don't be a bother. That is not the idea here. The idea is you know your body best. So if you feel something is off, then please reach out to the care provider. And the doula is somebody who can be there with you at your home through this journey, multiple touch points from 0 to 6 and beyond, right? So that is the great part of getting care. And it's so important for us to make sure that we connect with our PCP. What happens with pregnancy is, for almost 9 months, when you're pregnant, you kind of shift your care to an OB-GYN, right? So now you've forgotten who your PCP is sometimes. And this is a struggle, because then when you reach out to find your PCP, or you're changing your PCP, there's a huge shortage there as well. But I think what you need to know is, even if they don't see you for an annual physical, if you have something urgent going on, your PCP will see you. So make sure you set up that appointment right after you've given birth, or once that 6 week appointment is over with the PCP. Make sure you schedule your annual physical, and then again reach out to them for anything else that is going through with you in that duration.
What warning signs should I never ignore?
Yeah, so here is what I would say, the list, right? So shortness of breath, headaches that don't go away, abdominal pain, severe abdomen pain, and the swelling of the legs. So CDC has a chart that they have provided, which says, which has just these images, and it's in also multiple languages, that which includes these physical symptoms. And then mentally, if you're feeling disconnected, if you're feeling like you want to harm yourself or your baby, then you should definitely, these are the signs that should make you go to the ER. The one statistics that I want to share is, more than 50% of the pregnancy related deaths happen in postpartum, and 84% of them are preventable. So we are dealing with something that just, if you're feeling something is off, again, please reach out to your provider, healthcare provider, so they can check you out. And if they are not hearing you, I hope you have advocates that can amplify your voice, and that's one of the things that doulas can do, but your partners can do that. And trust your gut. If you're not feeling great, you're not feeling good, please re-emphasize to your provider that this is something that's happening, I'm not feeling good, and then you get the care that you deserve.
What are your top 5 tips for a woman experiencing postpartum?
Number one is, which I just shared, if trust your body. You know your body the best. If you're feeling off and you're feeling not feeling yourself, then you need to advocate for yourself and raise concern to your provider or to your family. So that's one. Two is you're not alone. Half of the world's population is giving birth to children. So it is, I can guarantee you that if you're feeling something, someone else is feeling that. So you can definitely find the support for it. It's just about making sure that you talk about what you're going through. And similarly, for people who've been through it, like share your experience so people know and can feel like these symptoms are normalized. I also want to share Postpartum Support International. It's an incredible nonprofit that has all these free resources for both providers and for parents. And I love to recommend people the support groups that they have for postpartum anxiety, depression, rage, infant loss, or there are just many topics that they have sessions on that are free that people can join, and they are sometimes in English and in Spanish. So that's another resource. And then there's a national maternal mental health hotline. And this is really critical because when you have something like this, which is focused on pregnancy and postpartum, the people who are receiving the calls are much more better trained to answer questions. So if you're in a moment of crisis, like if you're feeling, sometime in the middle of the night that you can't do this and you're having very intrusive thoughts, don't do this alone. Like give them a call, and things, you can work through this. Everything can be worked through. And then finally, I'd love to share about Sakhee itself, which is my own company, which is focused on supporting women during postpartum. So that's something, would love to offer education, awareness, and support for mothers in postpartum.